"I am happy you are amused," he said, and I thought he was just a little uneasy when he said it. I mean, he wanted me crazy, but not that crazy. "Yeah, now I know why they always depict madmen as laughing. You know, Werner, this is a pleasant spot, but I think I'll take my lunatic ass back to New York. Unless I'm still a prisoner." "You've never been a prisoner, except of yourself." "What will you do in New York?" "Oh, you know, tie up my affairs. Take a look at that painting you say I didn't do." "You didn't. Salinas discovered the lost Velasquez in the bowels of the Alba's vast holdings. Don't ask me how. All of Mark's machinations with it were merely to help Salinas smuggle it out of Spain. It truly had a fake Bassano painted on top of it. Perhaps Leonora Fortunati herself had done this to protect herself and her famous lover, as you have yourself described to me. It makes a good story anyway. Werner, don't you ever tell the truth?" "I always tell the truth, after a fashion," he said, and stood and shook my hand. "I'll be in touch," he said, and walked back into the house. The next day Franco drove me to Munich, and I caught a flight out to London and then to New York. I checked into the Midtown Hilton and called Mark, and we had a nice chat, with no mention of the various betrayals he'd engineered, although he did seem a little nervous on the line. He invited me to his celebration and mentioned in passing that you'd be there, and I accepted. After I stop talking, I'm going to download all the sound files you've just heard onto a CD and go to Mark's party and hand this CD to you. Why you? I don't know. You've always seemed a kind of neutral observer to me, and I'm curious about what you make of it. Maybe there's some clue you could point me at that'll make more sense of the whole affair than I could. You might want to study the painting, too, if you can get close enough. You might find it particularly interesting. It was 4 a.m. when I finished playing the last file, and then I fell into bed half-dressed and slept until almost noon. Slept right through the alarm and the buzzing on my cell phone, my secretary going a little batty trying to reach me. I called the front desk, but no Chaz Wilmot had shown up or called, which I thought odd. I thought the whole point of the CD was to meet and discuss it. When I checked my messages, there was one from Mark Slade inviting me to attend the auction that afternoon and asking me if I'd heard anything from Chaz. I'd planned to go back to Stamford. I had a meeting at 1, but I called the office and had it rescheduled. I was still somewhat under the spell of Chaz's weird tale and didn't feel up to discussing the details of theme park reinsurance. I screwed around for a few hours, making some calls and trying to do paperwork and emails and such, to no great effect, and then I cleaned myself up, dressed, and caught a cab uptown to Sotheby's. I wasn't in the room for more than a few minutes before Mark pulled himself away from a group of prosperous-looking gentlemen and steered me to a corner. He was full of himself that day, and full of the prospect of the killing he was going to make. The Billionaire Boys Club was there in strength, apparently, from Europe, Japan, the Middle East, Latin America, because this was a unique chance to snag a Velázquez. The last painting by the artist to go on sale had been the Juan de Pareja portrait that the Met had bought at Christie's in 1970 for $4.5 million, and there would not be another in the foreseeable future. I asked him whether the Met would get this one too, and he said not a chance. It's way out of their range now. Who then? He pointed to a woman wearing a severe gray suit standing in the rear of the room by the phones that off-site bidders used to communicate with their agents at the auction. She had black hair parted in the middle and done up in a bun, scarlet lipstick, and nail polish the same color. Olive skin, green eyes. That's Spain, Mark said. You mean the Prado? No, I mean the fucking Kingdom of Spain. You should watch her on the phone. And then he turned the conversation to Chaz and asked me again if I'd spoken to him at the party, and I said I had, and he asked me right out if Chaz had claimed to have painted the Velázquez, and I said yeah, he had. I didn't mention the CD. Mark said he was afraid of that, poor bastard. You know he had a nervous breakdown. I said I hadn't heard, but that he had seemed a little flaky. A little, Mark said. The guy's a refugee from the funny farm. I wonder why they let him walk around. And he went on to tell me the story of how he had gotten Chaz this commission in Europe, and how he'd gone off the rails there, and started accusing people of drugging him, and how he thought he could travel back through time and be Velázquez and paint his works, including this one, and that he'd blanked out big chunks of his real life. I said that was awful, and he said, yeah, but it's going to do wonders for his sales. If he'd produce something. People love crazy artist stories. Look at Pollock, look at Munch, look at Van Gogh. So that was Mark's tale, and after he'd delivered it, he dropped me in favor of a couple of guys in suits and spade beards who looked like sons of the desert, and I went to sit down. The auction started with half a dozen teaser items, which went quickly, and then the boys in white gloves rolled out the Velázquez, and there was a stir. The auctioneer said, "This is the Venus with Self-Portrait by Diego Velázquez, also called the Alba Venus," and he said a little about its history, and then announced that the bidding would start at $100 million. There were 4 serious bidders, as the bids raced up the ladder in $500,000 jumps, and after each round the auctioneer looked to the back of the room and got a nod from the Lady of Spain. And then one by one the others dropped out, and the Prado had it for $210 million, the highest price ever recorded for a single painting. Thus the barons of our age learned the lesson that the kings of the age of Velázquez had taught their own barons. It doesn't matter how rich you are, you can't compete with the sovereign. And what we were seeing here was Spain herself bringing back her purloined treasure. No one else had ever had a chance. What was that, 2.5 years ago? During that time, Chas Wilmot dropped completely out of sight. I'd always thought it would have taken a nuclear detonation to get him out of that loft, but apparently he'd cleaned out whatever he wanted and walked away from the rest. This I got from the girl at Lottie Rothschild's gallery. Lottie was still in business, doing rather better than before, to judge from her prices. I didn't stick around to see her.